The first time I followed my wife, I told myself I was only doing it to prove I was wrong. That was the lie I needed in order to turn the key. It was a wet Friday in Pittsburgh, the kind of rain that hangs in the air instead of falling. I sat half a block from Holloway Cleaners with my work truck idling, a cold gas station coffee in the cup holder, the wipers dragging gray lines across the windshield. Claire got out of her car at 6:17 p.m. She had her school tote on one shoulder and a white envelope in her hand. For 11 years, that woman had been the safest place in my life. She packed our son's lunch with little notes beside the napkin. She knew the sound my boots made on the porch, and there I was, watching her walk to the back door of an old dry cleaner like she was stepping into another life. A man opened the door. Tall, thin, gray coat. Claire looked over her shoulder once. Then she went inside. I kept both hands on the steering wheel and stared at that flickering sign until the coffee went completely cold. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 39, and I fix elevators for a living. Mostly the tired ones in apartment buildings, hospitals, and office towers that smell like dust, oil, and old carpet. I like that the work has rules. If a relay is burned, you replace it. If a cable is frayed, you don't pretend it will hold. Marriage is not like that, though I used to wish it was. Claire and I had been married 11 years. We lived in a narrow brick house on the south side of the city with a small porch, a cracked second step I kept promising to repair, and a maple tree that dropped leaves into the gutters every fall like it was trying to bury us. Our son, Owen, was 8. Skinny wrists, serious eyes, always missing one sock. He loved dinosaurs, pancakes, and impossible questions. Most mornings began the same way. I'd come downstairs in my work pants and reflective jacket while Claire made Owen's lunch and reminded him that, because it smells weird, was not a good enough reason to leave his spelling homework at home. She taught 3rd grade, and she was good at it. At home, she was softer. She drank tea from a chipped blue mug and used to tuck notes into my lunchbox. Don't skip breakfast. You're not 20 anymore. We weren't rich. We had a mortgage, a car payment, a noisy refrigerator, and an electric bill pinned to the fridge. But we were steady. At least I thought we were. The changes started small enough to explain away. Claire began going out on Friday evenings. At first, she said her mother needed help after physical therapy. Her mom, Diane, lived across town and had a bad hip, so it made sense. Claire would leave after dinner, kiss Owen on the head, tell me not to wait up, and come home smelling faintly like outside air and hand soap I didn't recognize. Then the cash withdrawals began. $300 one Friday, 452 weeks later, $600 at the end of the month. I saw them because we used the same checking account. I was paying bills at the kitchen table one Saturday morning, while Owen built a Lego creature beside me that had too many legs to be anything God intended. Did you take out $600 yesterday? I asked. Claire was rinsing a cereal bowl. Her shoulders tightened for half a second. Yeah, Mom needed help with some medication stuff. She's embarrassed. $600 embarrassed? She gave me a tired look. Ethan, that was all she had to say. My name, said in that small, disappointed way, like I had stepped on something delicate. I'm not saying no, I said. I just wish you'd told me. I was going to. She dried her hands. It's hard for her to ask, and honestly, it's hard for me to talk about money every time I try to help my own mother. I felt like a jerk, so I nodded, closed the banking app, and told myself I had married a woman who loved her family. That was supposed to be a good thing. The sweater came 2 weeks later. I was carrying laundry down to the basement when I saw Claire pull a gray men's sweater from the dryer. It was too big for me, and I'm not small. The cuffs were stretched. There was a faint brown stain near the collar. Whose is that? I asked. She folded it too quickly. Oh, school thing. We used some clothes for a class play. A men's sweater? It's for a character. She wouldn't look at me. Ethan, please. I'm late. There are moments in a marriage when you can press your finger into the bruise or pretend you didn't see it. I pretended, but after that, I noticed everything. Her phone stayed face down during dinner. She answered texts in the hallway. Friday evenings became something Owen accepted as part of the week, like trash pickup or pizza night. One night, while Claire was upstairs changing, Owen sat at the kitchen table pushing peas around his plate. Mommy still going to help Grandma? He asked. Yeah, buddy, I guess so. Grandma must need lots of help. After Claire left, I stood in the garage with a wrench in one hand and my phone in the other. I had told myself for weeks not to call Diane. It felt like crossing a line, but I called. Deanne answered on the 4th ring, breathless and cheerful. Ethan, honey, everything okay? Yeah, just checking in. Claire said your hip's been giving you trouble. My hip? She laughed. Oh, same old thing. I complain. The doctor tells me to do my exercises. I ignore him, then I complain again. So Claire's been helping. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. Well, she's busy with school and Owen. I haven't seen her in, 3 weeks maybe. Tell her I miss her. The wrench slipped from my hand and hit the cement floor. Ethan? Yeah, I said. I'll tell her. I hung up and stood there in the cold garage, staring at the oil stain near the workbench, while Owen's cartoon played faintly through the wall. That was the moment the ground moved. Not enough to knock me down, just enough that nothing in the house felt level anymore. I didn't explode when Claire came home. I wanted to meet her at the door with Diane's words in my mouth, but Owen was asleep upstairs, so I said nothing. That silence changed me. Over the next week, I became someone I didn't like. Watchful, careful, a man listening for loose screws inside the walls of his own house. I did not open her phone. I did not read her messages. I checked what was already ours. The bank account showed more cash. A receipt in the laundry room trash said Holloway Pharmacy. Another was from a thrift store near Hazelwood. A third, folded twice in her tan coat, had the name Holloway Cleaners printed at the top: dry cleaning, pharmacy, cash. Friday nights, a map would have been less obvious. I drove through that neighborhood on a Wednesday after work. It was a tired strip of storefronts between a closed bakery and a church with a plastic coat drive banner. Holloway Cleaners had 2 missing letters on its sign and yellowing curtains above it. I parked, watched for 5 minutes, then hated myself and drove home. On Friday, I told Claire I'd picked up an overnight maintenance call at a senior housing building. She touched my arm, distracted. Be careful. It was the kind of thing she always said, but that night it felt like a habit more than love. At 6:05, I parked my truck half a block from Holloway Cleaners. At 6:17, she arrived. When the man opened the back door, I felt something on me insides go still. I couldn't see his face well, just the sharp line of his shoulders, the gray coat. One hand braced against the doorframe like standing took effort. Claire stepped close to him. He looked at the envelope. She said something. He shook his head, then she hugged him. Not a polite hug, not a quick one. She folded into him like she had been holding herself together all week and finally had permission to break. His hand went to her hair. Her shoulders shook. I could hear nothing through the rain and glass, which made it worse. My mind filled in everything. I watched my wife cry in another man's arms behind a dry cleaner. Then she handed him the envelope. He hesitated. She pushed it into his hand. I drove away before she came out, because I was afraid of what I would do if I stayed. When I got home, I sat in the driveway with the engine off. Owen had taped a drawing to the front window. 3 stick figures under a huge orange sun. I looked at it until my eyes burned. Claire came home at 9:43. She said she had stayed late at school to finish grading reading tests. On a Friday, I asked. They're due Monday. There was a blue ink mark on the inside of her wrist. I stared at it too long. She pulled her sleeve down. That night, I slept on the couch. Or tried to. The refrigerator clicked on and off. Claire's shoes were by the door. One tipped sideways, the way she always left them. That used to make me smile. That night it made me feel stupid. At 2:10 in the morning, I got up for water. Her purse sat on the chair by the stairs. I know what I said about not crossing lines. I had already crossed one by following her, and suspicion always sounds reasonable. I opened the purse. I found her wallet, mints, a broken red crayon from school, and a folded piece of paper tucked into the side pocket. Friday, same time. Please don't tell Ethan yet. Below it was a single letter. I read it 3 times. Please don't tell Ethan yet. There are sentences that don't just hurt you. They rearrange you. By morning, I had become quiet enough that Claire noticed. You're scaring me, she said while Owen brushed his teeth upstairs. I was standing at the kitchen counter, looking at the mug she had set in front of me. Coffee, 2 sugars, no cream. She still remembered the little things that almost made it worse. Where were you last night? I asked. I told you. School. No. Her face changed. It was small. A tightening around the mouth. A blink that took too long. Ethan, don't say my name like that. Don't make me feel guilty for asking a question. She looked toward the staircase. I lowered my voice. Where do you go on Fridays? My mom's been having a hard time. I called Diane. The kitchen went silent. Claire set the dish towel down carefully. I can explain, she said. Then explain. She opened her eyes and they were wet already. I can't. Not yet. Something in me cracked clean through. You can't? Please, I know how this looks. Do you? Yes. Then who is he? She didn't answer fast enough. That pause did more damage than any confession could have. I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. God, Claire, no. Ethan, no. Is there another man? She covered her mouth. Answer me, Sixby. Please don't do this here. Where should I do it? Behind the dry cleaner. Her face went white. I had my answer. Or what I thought was my answer, and it made me reckless. You stood in this kitchen and lied to me. You used your mother. You took money out of our account and handed it to him like I was some idiot at home fixing the sink. It's not what you think. That is the most useless sentence in the English language. Her tears came then, quiet and terrible. Owen appeared halfway down the stairs in his pajama shirt, toothbrush still in his hand. Dad? Claire wiped her face. Sweetheart, go back upstairs. Are you fighting? I saw the fear land on him. Not loud fear. Just a child learning that the floor under his house could move. Buddy, go to your room. I'll be up in a minute. He backed away. After he was gone, neither of us spoke for a while. Claire reached for me. I stepped back. That hurt her. I saw it. At the time, I wanted it to. I'm going to the garage, I said. It's 40 degrees, then I'll be cold. I grabbed my keys from the counter and set them down again because I didn't trust myself to drive. Instead, I went into the garage, sat in the passenger seat of my own truck, and watched my breath fog the windshield. After a while, Claire opened the door from the house. She stood in the rectangle of yellow light wearing sweatpants and one of my old hoodies. Ethan, she said softly, I have never cheated on you. I wanted to believe her. That was the worst part. Then tell me the truth. She wrapped her arms around herself. I'm trying to figure out how. I turned away. The next morning, I went to Holloway Cleaners alone. Not to fight. I told myself that all the way there, I needed to see his face. Sometimes a man wants the truth and sometimes he wants a target. I wasn't sure which one I was. The front door was locked, even though the sign said open. I walked around to the back, where the alley smelled like wet cardboard and old steam. The gray door opened before I touched it. The man from Friday stood there. Up close, he was older than I had let myself imagine. 60s, maybe. Thin in a way that looked less like fitness and more like life had worn him down. His hair was silver and cut badly. His left hand trembled against the door. Can I help you? He asked. I said, I'm Ethan Miller. The name hit him like cold water. She doesn't know I'm here, I said. You're Martin's, I said. He nodded once. Who are you to my wife? He opened the door wider. You should come in. I don't want to come in. I understand. He looked exhausted. But you should. The back room of the dry cleaner was narrow and hot from old machinery. Plastic-wrapped suits hung from a metal rack. There was a folding chair, a cot against the wall, a small electric kettle, and a shelf lined with pill bottles. No candles, no wine, no secret apartment. Just poverty, medicine, and shame. Martin lowered himself into the folding chair. I'm Claire's father, he said. I stared at him. No, I said. He smiled without humor. That is usually the reaction. Claire's father left when she was little. I know what Diane told her. I stood there in my work boots, feeling the anger in me stumble, confused by the shape of the room. Martin reached toward a drawer with his shaking hand. It took him 3 tries to open it. He pulled out a photograph and placed it on the table. Claire, maybe 5 years old, sat on a man's shoulders in front of a county fair ride. She was laughing with her whole face. The man was younger, heavier, but the eyes were Martin's. I picked it up, the room tilted. What is this? My proof, he said. And my punishment. He told me the story in pieces because his breath caught when he talked too long. He had owned the dry cleaner with his older brother. There had been bad loans, unpaid taxes, money moved where it should not have been moved. Martin said his brother had done most of it, but he had signed forms he didn't read. There was an investigation, a short sentence, and enough public shame to poison a family. Diane came to see me once, he said. She said Claire was better off believing I had chosen to leave. She said a child could survive abandonment easier than disgrace. I thought of Diane laughing on the phone about her hip. What did you do? I asked. I let her. His eyes filled, but he didn't wipe them. At first, I thought I'd get steady, come back with something to offer. Then years passed. Pride becomes a locked door if you leave it long enough. How did Claire find you? A student at her school brought in a coat from here for a winter drive. The name was on the tag. Holloway. She looked it up. Came in one afternoon with her hands shaking. I could see it. Claire standing in that same room, carrying 30 years of story in her chest, discovering that part of it was false. She's been giving you money, I said. I told her not to. But you took it. His mouth tightened. Yes. The answer was honest enough to hurt. He gestured toward the shelf. Medication. Back rent. I sleep here because the apartment upstairs isn't safe anymore. I'm trying to get into a senior place, but forms take time and I'm not. He lifted his trembling hand. I'm not as useful as I used to be. The gray sweater. The pharmacy receipts. The thrift store. The envelope. The hug. Every piece I had used to build one story began fitting into another. Why didn't she tell me? I asked, though he was not the person who owed me that answer. Martin looked at the photograph in my hand. Because she was ashamed of me, he said, and because she loves you. That doesn't make sense. It does to people who think love can be protected by silence. I put the photograph down. A part of me wanted to be relieved so badly I almost grabbed at it. But relief did not erase the nights she lied. It did not erase Owen on the stairs. It did not erase the way I had watched my wife like a stranger. Martin leaned forward. She didn't betray you the way you think. No, I said. She found a different way. He lowered his eyes. When I got home, Claire was in the laundry room. The dryer turned slowly behind her, thumping once every few seconds. Owen was at a neighbor's birthday party. The house felt too quiet, as if it knew a hard conversation had scheduled itself and cleared the room. Claire looked up when I came in. She saw my face. Then she saw the photograph in my hand. Her knees seemed to give a little, and she sat down on the tile floor beside the laundry basket. You went there, she whispered. Yes. She nodded, staring at the photo. I set it on top of the dryer, along with the note and receipts I had carried around like evidence in a trial no one had asked for. For a while, the dryer did all the talking. I was going to tell you, she said. When? I don't know. That's the problem. She pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes. I know. No, Claire, I don't think you do. She dropped her hands. I found out my father was alive and poor and sick and not the monster I was raised to hate. I found out my mother lied to me my entire life. I found him sleeping behind a dry cleaner with a tremor, so bad he could barely button his shirt. I didn't know where to put that. So you put it between us. Her face crumpled. I sat across from her. Not close enough to comfort. Not far enough to leave. I thought you were having an affair, I said. I know. I watched you hug him. He's my father. I didn't know that. I know. Those two words, over and over. Not defense, not forgiveness. Just the brutal agreement of people standing in the wreckage of their own choices. Why didn't you trust me? I asked. She looked at me then, really looked. Because I didn't trust myself, she said. Because some ugly part of me believed if you knew where I came from, you'd look at me differently. I know where you come from. You knew the clean version. She laughed once through her tears. Widowed young, worked hard, raised her daughter alone. No messy father. No prison record. No family business with fraud attached to it. No teacher explaining to her husband that her dad isn't dead or gone, just hidden. I wanted to say I would never judge her for him. But the truth is I had already looked at her and seen someone else. Not because of Martin. Because of my fear. So I said the harder thing. I thought the worst of you. She nodded. I followed you. I figured. I went through your purse. She flinched. I'm not proud of that. You had reasons. Reasons aren't the same as permission. She crooked her face with the sleeve of my hoodie. I lied to you. Yes. A lot. Yes. I told myself I was waiting for the right time. But I think I was just scared. And every week made it worse. So I kept waiting, like time was going to fix what silence was breaking. The dryer buzzed. Finally, I stood and pulled out warm towels because some habits survive even the worst moments. I handed one to her. She pressed it against her face and cried quietly. I sat on the floor beside her, leaving a few inches between us. I can't live in a marriage where I only get the truth after I hunt it down, I said. She nodded into the towel. And I can't pretend I didn't turn into someone I don't recognize. You didn't make me lie. No. But I let suspicion make you a stranger before I knew the truth. Claire leaned her head back against the washer. What do we do? For the first time in weeks. I did not try to fix it quickly. I don't know, I said. But whatever we do, it has to start with telling the truth to the right people. She knew what I meant. Her mother, Deanne, lived in a small ranch house with plastic flowers in the front window. We went the next afternoon. Claire held the photograph in her lap the whole way. Martin came in a cab and stayed near the sidewalks, hands deep in his coat pockets, looking at the house like it might reject him physically. Deanne opened the door smiling, then she saw him. No, she said. The inside of the house smelled like lemon cleaner and black tea. 3 cups sat on the coffee table, untouched, because Diane had always believed hospitality could control anything. But nothing controlled that room. Claire did most of the talking. She cried, got angry, repeated herself, and asked how a mother could decide which truth her child deserved. Deanne defended herself at first. She said Martin had humiliated them, that Claire was 5 years old and woke up crying for a man who had ruined everything. I gave you a life that wasn't stained by him, she said. Claire's voice shook. You gave me a story with a hole in it and told me not to look down. Martin stood near the doorway, not sitting, not asking for comfort. He looked smaller than he had in the back room of the cleaner. I was wrong, he said. Diane turned on him. You don't get to come here and make yourself noble. I'm not. You left me with bills, shame, and a child. I know, you know. Her laugh was sharp. That fixes it? No, something about that stopped her. Maybe because he didn't argue. Maybe because the truth, once it arrives, is often less dramatic than the years spent hiding from it. Claire held up the photograph. I don't need a clean story anymore, she said. I need the real one. Diane sat down then, not gracefully. Like someone whose legs had given up, I stayed mostly quiet. This was not my wound. Not originally. My job was to sit beside my wife and not make her carry it alone. At one point, under the coffee table, she reached for my hand. I let her find it. That did not mean everything was fixed. It meant I was still there. The weeks after that were not beautiful in the way movies make healing look. Martin moved into a subsidized senior apartment with help from a church social worker. Claire still visited him, but she showed me the schedule. She paid some of his pharmacy costs from her personal account, and we talked about what we could and could not afford. Deanne did not forgive him. Maybe she never would. But she stopped pretending he had vanished into thin air. Owen knew only what an 8-year-old needed to know. His mom had found her dad. Grown-ups sometimes make painful mistakes. And none of it was his fault. Claire and I started counseling on Wednesday evenings. I hated it at first. I hated the soft chairs, the tissue box, the way the counselor asked questions that made ordinary sentences feel like doors you had to open carefully. But I went. Claire went too. Some nights we came home lighter. Some nights we barely spoke in the car. Trust did not return like a sunrise. It came back like a man crossing ice, one careful step at a time, listening for cracks. One Friday morning, about 2 months after I sat outside Holloway Cleaners, I came downstairs to find a white envelope on the kitchen table for a second. My body remembered before my mind could catch up. Claire was by the sink, holding her blue mug. "It's not money," she said. I walked to the table and opened it. Inside was Martin's appointment schedule. A pharmacy receipt, a housing form, and a note in Claire's handwriting. "Dad needs a ride at 5. I'd like you with me if you want to come. No secrets. No soft lies." I looked at the envelope, then took my keys from my pocket and set them beside it. Claire's eyes filled. But she didn't rush toward me or try to turn it into a perfect moment. "I'll drive," I said. She nodded. Outside, Owen shouted that his backpack was stuck on the railing. The cracked step was still unrepaired. The refrigerator still made that trapped animal sound. Our life had not become clean. It had become honest. As I followed Claire out into the gray Pittsburgh morning, I realized that was what I had wanted all along. Not a marriage without fear. Not a family where nobody had ever failed, hidden, lied, or broken something they loved. Just a door that opened, a truth spoken before it turned poisonous, a hand reaching across the space, not to cover the wound, but to say, "I'm here while it heals."